similar type of thing happened. I sort of faded at the very end, and also just all the blowouts and stuff was weird. It was looking like I was going to crush for a little while. I had some really low owned plays and some good looking stuff, and it just couldn't quite get there. Between the overtime of the one game and the all of the just complete blowouts in the games that I was playing.
Yeah.
Sheets, how did you? I did really well in NFL last night though.
Did you?
More than doubled up in NFL. Yeah, I had a nice. I was literally the last drive would have been huge if you could have gotten, if somehow Jalen Hurts could have hit the Hail Mary to Devontae Smith. I think I'm probably the top 3 or so because I had a really nice build around that. But
yeah, I did well. I did well too. I made about 60% in the showdown as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Let me show you what my alley-oop was. And yeah, I just got beat out of the money at the end there. But yeah, Ivy got blown out. Ivy got fouled out actually.
But he played great. He did really well in the second half.
And Vince Williams got he got blown out.
Yeah.
Even Isaiah Jackson got blown up. But these are 80% on guys. Aldama, I could have used him finishing the game. That would have been nice.
Yeah.
I could have used Rozier having a reasonable second half at 10% ownership. Are you kidding me?
I know. And he was off to a great start too.
That was that, and Paul George, I could have used the last quarter out of him too.
All the Clippers, that's part of what got me too, is I had, except for Harden, I didn't have that much Harden, and Harden, of course, went completely berserk.
Oh my God, they paid 88. They got me by 0.75 points at the end of the day, didn't they? Those dirty.
Yeah, if you scroll just right around there, you'll see me. I'm sure somewhere. I don't remember exactly.
At the beginning, I saw you were like in 7th, I was in 8th or something at the very, very
beginning. It was looking like a good start, but it didn't pan out.
Yeah. Oh well.
All right. Well, we're going to try and figure out this weird 4-gamer. And I think it's actually like a really interesting slate going through it a little bit because it's like they're all tough, but you've got the team that's going to play the most guys like ever, which is where all the value is. So it's kind of a little bit tricky. So we'll get into it. We'll go game by game and see what we got here.
Hang on. Before we do that, I have to, I want to do a dummy lineup just so I remember. Otherwise, I really will never remember to enter my lineup. So we're going to play this one, and we'll reserve 50 for now. We'll do 3 in the box out. We'll go 1 in the splash, which is 3 in the box out, 1 in the splash, and that should be. And I'll probably play one of the single entries. Okay, let's just save this so I have something.
Don't accidentally put that Rainmaker. I told you one of my biggest horrible regrets ever.
I did that once by mistake. I did that myself. Yeah.
Oh man, I had a big one. I don't even want to talk about how big it was that I hit. That's part of my other reason for not liking to leave money on the sites because it was really bad to misclick a 25K buy-in tournament.
Oh my God, 25K?
Yeah, it was years ago.
Oh my God.
Anyway, and it was weird because I actually won money on the slate, even with the 25K loss.
Oh my God.
I won like 40K. It was like for first or something. Anyway, it was just very, very tilting though. Anyway, Memphis, New Orleans. We get Ja Morant back finally. All right, Sheets, why don't you start this one off? Or I'm happy to if you want me to.
No, I'll do it. So, with as you kind of alluded to, the San Antonio-Milwaukee game is going to be what you have to kind of figure out. I mean, among other things, but it's fun to have Morant back. The good thing about his situation is that he's been able to practice. It's not like he's been hurt or anything like that. So I think he's in shape. So I'm expecting he's kind of ready to go, man. Like 32 minutes. I think that's pretty reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
But now he's entering this environment where it's kind of tough to pay up for guys in general. But I don't know. He's obviously going to be motivated. 32 minutes at 9,200 for him against New Orleans. I don't know. I might be inclined to take a shot. The New Orleans guys, as look pretty decent. Valanciunas at 7,200. He rates pretty well, as does Ingram, as usual, as does Zion. So I don't know. I mean, most of the value is going to come from this Milwaukee-San Antonio blowout or whatever the hell it's going to happen there. But there's nothing wrong with that. Like, what is a Morant? I don't know. Valanciunas. Well, Zion is questionable. Ingram, what does that look like? Is that bad? Probably. But I don't know. What do you think of this game?
Yeah, my first thoughts are sort of the same thing as you. I want to point out too that Zion definitely look every it was I'm sorry, Ja definitely didn't have like a Ja was never going to be the number one pick in that draft where he was number two to Zion, but it still always bothered him. But at the time, he was sort of like the golden boy of the NBA, and now he's sort of on the other side as like the dark. I just think it's interesting. It's a number one versus two matchup. These guys sometimes some of these guys take it very seriously. Ja, I expect to come in firing. I think 9,200 is totally reasonable. Again, it's a little different, like, NBA playing shape versus practicing and stuff like that. But I'm guessing that they got him completely ready. They're trying to turn their season around. They're not going to be able to. They're probably too far in the hole. But I think they let Ja try to do his thing tonight. So I love, if Zion plays, I love Ja and Zion on the other side. I think the value with Vince Williams, assuming that he starts again, is something that we can definitely do because it's kind of tricky. You could also go for David Roddy at lower ownership as a different one. It really depends on who starts between those two guys, which is who's going to get the ownership. And my guess is it'll be Williams, but it could be Roddy. We could see it switch up. And I like the Zion on the other side if he plays. If he doesn't, I will go straight to Brandon Ingram and maybe some Joval, but probably more Brandon Ingram for me. And I don't even think like I would cross off like Herb Jones and Trey Murphy. Trey Murphy, his price it's a weird one with him because you're going to get a high range of outcomes, but there's like no reason why he couldn't score 40 fantasy points. He's a real scorer. He's going to put up some 45s. He's going to put up some 25s. The minutes are going to flux a little bit, but he is a big part of their future. And I think the minutes are going to start trending more to the 30s rather than these low 20s that we've mostly seen. So I like this game, but mostly it's going to be probably Ja, Vince Williams, Zion at first look, depending on what happens with Zion, and then maybe Trey Murphy as a fringy play. All right, San Antonio and Milwaukee. Go ahead, Sheets.
All right, so if you get this one right, you probably win. But let's start with. I guess we'll just start with San Antonio. So Wembanyama is out, and what would have been like a 12-point spread already is now like 16, I think. And this affects both sides of this game. And the top play on the board is going to be Zach Collins. He's going to get, even if the game doesn't stay close, he's going to get enough minutes at 4,900 to make it work. I mean, it's the way it's going to be. It's going to be 80% owned. And it's to me, it's kind of a tough fade if you want to know the truth. Other guys on San Antonio. Now, the one that could also be 50% owned that could fail maybe is Mamu. Okay, so Mamu we expect, right, to be the 3K guy who gets minutes. We just expect that because I guess it's happened before. We also expected Rashard Holmes to get minutes last night. Just didn't happen.
You got a few.
It's different. Everything's different. I get it. Okay.
You got a few.
But if what's that?
He got a few minutes there.
Oh, did he get in? I didn't even know he got in at all.
Yeah. He ended up getting in a little bit. I think he played like 7 minutes or something.
Yeah. So I guess my question is that if in fact there's no coach speak, or even if there is, I mean, Pop can do whatever he wants if they're down 30. You know what I mean? And Mamu is 50% owned or more. And Dominic Barlow decides to come in and play the 12, 13 minutes instead of Samu, everybody's going to be very upset and tilted, but they're really not allowed to complain. I'm just saying that.
Yeah.
Other guys from this game, you have minutes issues across the board. Just because of the blowout, you could try to make blowout lineups, I suppose. But Vassell, Keldon Johnson, they seem to be the most logical. Sohan hasn't really thrown a lot of upside up there recently, for me at least. So Vassell and Keldon Johnson would make a lot of sense. So yeah, you got to figure out what to do on San Antonio, but Zach Collins certainly seems like the best player on the board. On the Milwaukee side, I think that on a short slate, I think Giannis can produce enough fantasy points in 3 quarters where you should probably try to play him. God forbid the game does stay close and you do need 4 quarters out of him. Now you have a 4-game slate where he's really could be a must-have. He's only 11K, right? So there's that. And then there are these other guys that are good blowout own blowout players like Portis, Pat Connaughton, and really whoever you want, like Beauchamp or whatever it is. It's a tough slate for a 4-gamer. I'm probably less inclined to play like the normal guys, like Middleton. Less inclined to play him. Less inclined to play Brook Lopez. I had this remembrance of Bobby Portis being great in these blowout games. That maybe I'm just being biased about that. But I would start maybe with him. Connaughton, I always feel is good in those types of games as well, especially when the defense stops. So I don't know, and I don't think that starters make too much of a difference in this game. I guess that's all I have for now.
Yeah, so it's really weird. So Collins is going to be basically hard not to lock. This is probably the best value we've had this season, as far as I remember anyway. Don't you think? I don't remember seeing a guy projecting for like 8+X at 5K.
Nope.
So Collins is where you're starting, I think, all your builds. And I was actually going to say, okay, well, I'll split up Collins and Mamu. And I'm like, no, I don't need to do that. I can just play them both together and probably still be okay.
Well, that's a question. I mean, can you do that? I mean, you
yeah,
can.
Because the price is so cheap. The problem is you're locking up your center spot. But at the same time, we don't really have like that many centers to love. There's one that I really like tonight, but we'll get to him in a minute. I kind of agree with most of what you said. I'm a little higher on Sohan than you are, because I think Sohan actually gets has a lot more opportunity for usage without what's his name in there, without Wemby in there. The thing that bothers me is they are so crazy deep. Like guys who don't project like anything, like Cedi Osman, could easily outscore like every starter on their team, except for maybe Zach Collins. You know what I mean? And it's just like, so I think the rule is you have to play probably at least two of these guys. Collins and Mamu are the most obvious. And I don't even know that Mamu is necessarily like good obvious. Yes, he can definitely get the minutes. Yes, there's a lot of pads, but it doesn't, like, they don't need to play necessarily big because Bobby Portis might be the center for the second string unit. So it's kind of tricky. Collins, Mamu. I have Sohan, then Vassell as my third and fourth. I do like Branham. And I think there's two ways you play this game. You could play it's probably going to be a blowout. It's probably going to be a massive blowout. But if it isn't, what about playing Collins, Vassell, Sohan, and Branham? And then on the other side, playing Giannis. And you don't need to add another piece, but what about Giannis and Connaughton can play both ways in a tight game or in a blowout. So maybe Giannis and Connaughton, or even Giannis and Portis, even though there's a little bit of overlap somewhat, you'd think position-wise, but Giannis doesn't really have a position. I think that's kind of an interesting way to go, and maybe get 6 guys from this game and see if you can hit with those guys. The problem is you're going to end up still fairly chalky in most spots. What you're differentiating on is that type of build, because most people aren't going to go 4-2, assuming the game is close for San Antonio. So the other way to build, I think, is just play the Portis. Again, I love Portis here. Play the Portis, stick with the value, the Collins, the Mamu. And then the other guys you'd consider maybe for some blowout run would be Trey Jones, Cameron Payne on the other side, Cedi Osman, just Julian Champagne. There's just so many bodies for the Spurs. It's really hard to know. I really hope they release some sort of funky starting lineup and like Champagne is starting or something weird tonight. Gives us some extra value and also lets us play some other fringy plays that like, let's say they just didn't start Sohan tonight or Branham. I'll play those guys off the bench. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's a pretty chalky game. It's hard to get away from this chalk on a 4-gamer, but I do think you're going to probably want at least 3 pieces, maybe as many as 6 from this game to be competitive, because there's really not a whole lot of other great value out there right now.
Yeah, we were talking about him the other day, you and I, whether they would make Champagne chalk today because of his big game, but.
I thought he'd be chalky because I thought they would project him to play more minutes, but
yeah,
they're not going to give him that. I guess there's just too many bodies to give him that role. And they've got, like, they didn't have McDermott earlier in the year. If they didn't have him, maybe he could get some more extra minutes. If anything was Osman, Jones, any one of those guys were out, he would look like a great play. All right. Phoenix and Portland, the battle of the big trade of the season, before the season. What do you got here, Sheets?
You mean Ayton and Nurkic?
Yep.
Yeah, I can't see a world where Ayton, gets mad at anybody and does anything. But I don't know if you like him more, but I think Nurkic is. I have Nurkic very similar to Valanciunas actually today. Same price, same projection, same projected ownership. So I think those two are very similar for me, at least. Anthony Simons at 7,500. He certainly looks good. I just can't get to 8 and above the other centers. I mean, between Collins and Sandro and Valanciunas and Nurkic, I just think Ayton is below all of them. And that's pretty much all I have here.
Yeah, I was really hoping that they would sit out, that Grayson Allen would be out, but it looks like he's probable now. That would have opened up potentially, and it's still probably like, so I'm looking for very fringy plays. Like, this is what you do, okay? So Nurkic, I think, is actually like a really good play. And I actually like Nurkic better than Joval if Zion plays. If Zion doesn't play, I think it switches. It's really close. But I buy in, man. I'm in on the narrative. I'm in on every part of it. Nurkic is also, he's not a passive guy. He will try to take it at you. And you can look at his matchups with Jokic when it's body language. He looks like he's attacking all the time, and he gets a lot more aggressive. And there's no Bradley Beal tonight, so I mean, we've had that a lot of the season. But Nurkic has also been pretty good this season, so I like Nurkic. He'd be the one. I don't think there's anything wrong with getting to Kevin Durant or Booker because Giannis is in such a high blowout risk game. I think if you're playing multiple lineups, you definitely keep like guys like Durant, Booker, obviously Ja Morant and Steph Curry in your pool because any of these guys could outscore Giannis if that game gets like crazy out of hand. You know what I mean? Like 35 at halftime kind of a deal.
Yeah.
But Goodwin would be the guy who's very fringy, but I think I could take a gamble with him because he's so active when he does play. There's definitely always blowout risk for Portland when they play, even at home. So that's one angle you can take as the Goodwin side. I like Simons, but I don't think it's a must play. Jeremy Grant, I think, is fine. I think that Ayton is, I mean, I don't care about his revenge. I mean, I actually think that he does have a little bit more of that in him than people think. But it's not the revenge thing. It's just the fact that he's cheap enough. He's going to be low owned, and I wouldn't mind gambling, but it's certainly not a priority for me. Like you said, there's no real priorities. I'm just naming all the guys I'm considering because it's a small slate and you want to sort of think about everybody. Scoot Henderson was the other one who I thought of for potential value, but probably going to be on the outside looking in for me. And what they're doing with Brogdon doesn't really make any sense to me. One of these days at 6,600, he's going to absolutely destroy a slate, and he's projected to come off the bench again. They might shift things a little bit and let Brogdon get some starts before the trade deadline. Let Brogdon play some minutes. At 6,600, if you get the 34 minutes Brogdon, boy, you could end up running away with things at no ownership. So he's a creative play that I'm considering. A lot of considering this morning because it's going to be very obvious to build a chalky line, a cash game lineup. But I think we have to consider these fringy plays here to have a chance tonight. Okay, Boston and Golden State to close it out.
Yeah, I mean, I have Jaylen Brown and Tatum both playable. Then I have, Porzingis is questionable. That's something.
Yeah, I think Porzingis, depending on which site you look at, they've got him out or they've got him starting. So hard to know.
So that's good. That's something.
Yeah.
Golden State. I heard someone try to make a case for Wiggins. I don't know. I don't like much of anything here. Brzezinski seems too much, 6,100. Maybe Kuminga low owned, 5,400. Aside from that, I don't have much. Chris Paul's only 6,200. That might be interesting. Obviously not a great matchup, but it's only 6,200. I don't know. You have anything good here?
I like Jaylen Brown. And I think that that Porzingis is closer to doubtful than positive, but Horford is here, so we don't get the extreme value. I think that like right now, Saber Sim's projection on Neemias Queta is way higher than I think it should be because he legit may not play today, and he's projected to for like 19 fantasy points. Jaylen Brown with Porzingis out, I think Tatum we can make the other priority. Like I think that's just very, very appealing. He's probably going to end up playing the 5 a little bit tonight. And he's also, he'll play, or they'll have Horford at the 5. There's just going to be more rebound opportunity for him. There's going to be more scoring opportunities without Porzingis. Great matchup. They also have the revenge factor from the NBA title 2 years ago in Golden State. I'm kind of in on this idea. So I think one of Tatum or Brown is a really good idea. The problem is just how do they rank versus the other plays. I think they're ahead of the other stuff we talked about. But like the guys like Chris Paul or sorry, not Chris Paul, Seth Curry or John Morant. I like both. I like the Tatum play better, I think, but I think he's also going to be a lot more popular. So maybe you can just weigh that in. I don't think anyone's going to play Steph. And if you wanted to go just super contrarian, you could start your lineups with Steph and John Morant and then use the other value pieces. I think that's completely viable today. I also think you could argue the same thing for a guy like Tatum or Booker or Durant. But I just think just getting different with that part of your build is interesting. I'm higher on Kuminga tonight I'm always higher on Kuminga than everybody else is. And he rarely comes through. But I think that at low ownership, I'll probably take that shot. And I also think you get some edge because what if Chris Paul's out and we don't know in the first thing? If Chris Paul's out, Kuminga becomes a much better play. And the guy who also I'm playing right now is Podziemski. I'm in on the 6,100. I think it's a very fair price. He's playing 32 plus minutes every night. It's Boston, but they're at home. And they're going to pay all the attention to Curry. Podziemski might get a few extra shots tonight. And I'm sort of open to that. The Wiggins thing is too fringy and he looks so bad, but this is the team that he destroyed in the finals. So there's a lot to consider here, but not a lot to love in the later games. I'm trying to get exposure there just because I've seen this happen so many times. You get some late news on a slate and all of a sudden somebody sits in one of these late spend ups end up being the best play on the slate. So leaving that 9,700 out there to whether you want to play Durant, Tatum, Booker, or even Curry. If somebody gets announced out, all of those guys, I mean, we have Chris Paul questionable. That's one big one. Obviously still up in the air on Porzingis. Any of those things can boost those guys a little further. So if we don't know at lock, I might just go ahead and try to leave that spot for those guys in a couple of lineups.
It should come as no surprise. I just ran the Saber Sim builds and getting basically 100% of the combination of Collins, Giannis, and Sandro. It's just too easy to put in that way. And I'd be getting literally 100% Collins, 100% Giannis, 96% Sandro. So if you want to do anything else, you're gonna be ahead of the field, I think. Presuming everything holds. You know what I mean? Obviously, stuff can happen, announcements can be made, but if you wanted to, max two of those two, maybe. That's a way to get different.
One other way to get different is I mentioned all the 9K guys, but instead of playing Giannis, you could also play Lillard. That immediately would just differentiate your stack a little bit and save you some money. So I think that's kind of interesting too.
Well, that's very similar. I mean, if you do max two of those, then I'll play.
It'll probably force in the Lillard.
You think Lillard will be the next? But how is Lillard getting?
Lillard actually projects better than all of the other 9K guys. No, okay. He projects to be higher owned than all the other 9K guys.
No, but what I was going to say is I think that the only thing that prohibits Giannis from getting there is the blowout. And if there's a blowout, then isn't that going to affect?
It could be a blowout because Lillard hits 10 threes in 3 quarters.
Yes, it could.
That's sort of the way. And if there's a matchup for it, then this would be the matchup for it. I still really like the Vassell play on the Vassell and making a little stack there. Unfortunately, that's going to be somewhat owned. I have a little. So I mean, the obvious priorities are probably at least 2 from the Spurs. I think that's a good way to start. I say 1 from Milwaukee, but I don't think it has to be honest. And I think that your other plays. I like Nurkic. I like the Tatum or Brown idea. Ja and Curry, I think, are really, really interesting. Get different plays. I really like that actually. And then you get all the other fringy value stuff that I'm going to probably get exposure to, the Sohan, the what's his name? I'll probably play a little bit more Malachi Branham than other people will today. Vince Williams, I'll probably play as long as he starts. And you're sort of pairing those guys that I think you could just get. It feels like a good slate just to get different with your 2 spend ups. And like I said, I keep going back to that Curry and Ja thing and. Man, that might even be overkill for what you need to get different.
Here's another thing that again I think is useful. So I told you I just ran the regular Saber Sim builds. I'm getting was 100% of those 3 guys. When you apply the contest sims or whatever, which adjust for ownership a little bit, you actually get much less Giannis. I'm getting 25% Giannis if I do that. And much more of kind of the middling, those San Antonio guys you mentioned, like Branham, Sohan, Vassell, Keldon Johnson, without Giannis.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not surprised, but it does make some sense. But it's very interesting. I'm just going to throw out one more name that we didn't talk about, just that you could always consider on these slates. Look at Klay Thompson's game. He's on fire. He's turned it around. His shooting is back. But even with those, like he's 5 of 10 from 3, 11 for 16 from the floor last game, only 38 fantasy points. He hit 8 of 12 threes, and he still only had 46 fantasy points. Like, I want to see a big ceiling out of a guy like that, but I do think that he's sort of found his stride, and they're looking his way a lot these days. So just throwing that one extra play out there. But we'll be more refined. We'll be live at 6:30. Cheech, are you gonna be able to make it?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, well, hopefully we'll be here at 6:30. I'm going to do some early prep for some of the stuff. I'm sure we'll cover some football slates because we've got a bunch of football slates coming up. Well, Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Yeah.
And then there's the crazy basketball tournament on Tuesday. There's a lot of DFS left in the year. Hopefully we can end on a strong note. Cheech, anything else before we get out of here?
No.
All right, good luck, everybody, and let's have a big night. If you have any questions in Discord, make sure to tag me, though.